Hello guys, and welcome to another quick video by Professor Choi. So today we're going to be doing our next video on a series that I'm titling Simple Steps for a Better Future. There was a video at the beginning of the series where I provided some financial advice for young adults, and I gave them these basically 5 different things, financial advice that they need to be doing right away. Now, today we are on video number 4, where I'm trying to explain why you need to avoid recurring high interest credit card debt, or basically recurring any high interest debt. Alright, so again, we did a video on becoming money aware, we did a video on how to create a budget, we did a video on why you need to open a retirement account, and everyone should be watching that video. And today we're talking a little bit about how to why do you need to avoid high interest debt. Alright, so we need to avoid high interest debt in a very basic way, because when you pay high interest debt, you're paying interest on top of interest, and it's extremely difficult to get out of when it's a really high interest debt. Credit cards variable APR numbers usually run anywhere between 14.9% to something like 24%, and default is somewhere around 29%. The numbers are absolutely ridiculous. Now, what is it that makes you pay so much money? Well, in a very basic way, if you owe somebody $100 and they're charging you 1% interest per year, then basically all you're going to pay on those $100 is $1 at the end of the year. So in other words, you're going to owe that person $100 and then $1 for keeping those 100 that were theirs. So you got to give them 101 at the end of the year. That's not too bad. Alright? But let's jack up that number to $5. Sorry, 5%. Okay? So 5%, now you owe them $5. And again, it's only $100, so $5 doesn't look like much. Okay? But how about jack up that number now to 10%? Now 10%, you owe them $10. And $10 is 10 times more than 1%. And that will start piling up. Okay? Now, let's talk about 20%, like a credit card. On 20%, you owe them $20. And again, $20 is 4 times more than 5%, and it's 20 times more than 1%. So what you're basically doing is you're increasing the amount of interest very, very quickly. The higher interest rate you pay, so you are basically giving somebody else a lot of money for no reason. I'm one of those people that tries to refinance to lower interest rates pretty much as long as I can. And I like to pay all of my credit cards usually at the end of the month. So I basically just borrow the money that I was going to be using in cash, and then I just use it on my credit card, because a lot of the times it's just easier to pay with a credit card. Plus, it's simpler to manage a lot of your bills with credit cards, because you see all that stuff. They give you like a list. There's some credit cards out there, like I think Discover does it, that they even give you a listing of all your expenses, and they even give you a listing of all your expenses for the year. So basically you can manage a budget just by using the right credit cards all the time, and basically just following their expenses that they have already listed for you. In any case, the point that we're trying to make is, if you pay really high interest rates, you're going to end up paying a lot of money. And remember, right now we're only doing the math for $100. How about if you have $1,000 in debt? Then everything over here has an extra 0. Well, how about now if you get into $10,000 in debt? Then you're going to pay an extra $100 at 1%, $500 at 5%, $1,000 at 10%, and $2,000 at 20%. And that is per year. So in other words, if you owe them for 5 years, you're going to pay that every year just to pay them back the money. Alright, now, the higher the interest rate, the more you're basically paying interest, and not to you. The more money you're paying somebody else. If you have something at 10%, and for whatever reason you can bring it down to 5%, you should do it, because that extra 5% is money that you can put in your pocket, and there's no reason why somebody else should have it. Alright, now, Now, what are some of the basics when it comes to the level of interest rates? If you start watching the videos that I have on economics and you bump into one of those where we talk about the Federal Reserve, you would understand that most interest rates in the US are basically managed by the Federal Reserve. So they are the ones who manage the lower end of the curve on interest rates. Okay? And this is called the yield curve. And the Federal Reserve is in charge of the bottom end of the curve on the interest rate, while the higher end of the curve on the interest rates is usually being, it's kind of like public trading that does that. So it's mostly long-term bondholders that kind of move that one. So on the shorter end, the Federal Reserve is the one that manages the behavior of interest rates. So they're usually the ones that kind of pull it down or they kind of push it up depending on whether the economy has inflation or it's in recession and there's a deflationary environment. So anyway, you should look for that video. So that's for movements in general, up and down. But let's talk about some of the basics of whether you should have secured debt or unsecured debt. Secured debt has usually a lower interest rate because you have what we call collateral. Secured debt has collateral, and collateral is something like your car or your house. So if the company has collateral, then they will be willing to lower that interest rate because they know that if you cannot pay, they're going to repossess a particular valuable item, and therefore they are more secured and they offer lower levels of interest rate. So having secured loans is usually better in terms of interest rate than having unsecured loans. Unsecured debt usually have a much higher interest rate, and unsecured debt is extremely easy to get into. Credit cards is really the best example of unsecured debt. Personal loans is another good example of unsecured debt. Now, I always like to say that no debt is the best way to live. I mean, if you live debt-free, then that's the best thing to do. But unfortunately, if you want to buy some of the things that you like, think about like, I don't know, a better car or maybe even a more reliable car, or if you want to buy a house at some point, then you're going to have to get into debt. That basically means you're going to have to learn how to manage debt correctly. Alright? Now, let me give you again some numbers on how having a higher interest rate can cost you a lot of money over long periods of time. There is an app that you can have on your phone. It's called the Loan Amortization app. And there's a lot of people that have those, so you're going to see multiple. Plus, there's a really good one on Excel that you should be using. The Loan Amortization app gives you an idea of the amount of interest that you're going to be paying on any type of debt at any particular interest rate over whatever period of time. So I ran some numbers here to help you understand this. Now, imagine that you're going to borrow $20,000 and you're going to do it for 5 years. Alright? So again, something like a car loan. So you get $20,000 for 5 years. Now let's talk about the amount of interest that you're going to pay. So how much interest you're going to pay on that debt, depending on the percent of interest that you pay on that debt. So if you pay 5% interest on that debt, the amount of money you're going to give the bank is $2,645 over those 5 years. So your $20,000 debt becomes a $22,000 debt or $22,645 debt by the time that you pay off the loan in 5 years. If instead that debt is at 10%, then now all of a sudden you're going to be paying $5,496 in that debt. So your $20,000 original borrowed amount becomes $25,496 over 5 years. If instead now you're paying something like credit card interest rates 24%, then you're going to be paying $14,521 in extra payments on interest only to the bank. So your original $20,000 plus $14,000, you're paying $34,000 in total payments. Notice how a much lower interest rate can save you a ton of money compared to a much higher interest rate which will cost you a ton of money. So please stay off high interest credit card debt. Avoid it as much as possible. As a matter of fact, maybe I want to take these off and just say avoid recurring high interest debt. Try to stay on low interest debt as much as possible. Alright. Let's talk about debt. And in another video, I kind of addressed that a little bit because I believe there is good debt and there is bad debt. Now, what exactly is the difference? Well, good debt is a debt that pays you back. And bad debt is debt that drops in value quickly. Or, debt that you buy assets that drop in value. In other words, you're consuming. Alright, the best example of good debt is to go to school. Education. You guys ever heard that knowledge is power? I think a lot of my videos, if you're watching all of the ones on the series, prove this. Knowledge is power. It can make you money and it can keep you financially healthy over your lifetime. If you learn this stuff, the earlier the better. Good debt is debt that pays you back money. If you get into some kind of debt, let's say for example, you decide to open a business and become an entrepreneur, but you got to borrow money in order to do that. Well, that may actually be really good debt because that business is going to pay you back money for the lifetime of the business. Let's say that you get into debt to grow, again, the capabilities of your business. That may be good debt because you can end up selling that later and making more money. Let's say that again you get into debt to start your online store. I mean, you're really into it. That may be good debt because again that money will pay you back eventually. So anything where you get paid back eventually. So entrepreneurship. Something that gives you back more skills so you can become better in the future. Any of that kind of debt is probably good debt because it pays you back. Because you're going to get your money and then some. What is bad debt? Bad debt is the one that you spend money on and then immediately it loses value. Bad debt is debt that you buy in an asset that depreciates very quickly. A really good example of this is imagine that, I don't know, Super Bowl is coming and you want to have the biggest TV in the world with the biggest surround sound so you can enjoy with your friends. You go out there and spend $2,000 on it. Now you may enjoy that TV quite a lot and you may enjoy that surround sound quite a lot, but those $2,000 are no longer worth $2,000 and they're not going to give you any money in the future. They might give you happiness in the future, but they don't make you any money. So basically, you're getting into debt to consume. And then now you're on the hook for $2,000 and you owe them with interest. This is bad debt. Too much of this is bad for you. Now don't get me wrong, you gotta have some things where you can play around, you gotta have some fun, but a lot of bad debt, really bad for you. Vacations is another excellent example of extremely bad debt. Especially if you put all of that on your credit card, then pay it over for 5 years or 4 years or whatever it is. Interest rate on credit cards are ridiculously high. Please do your math and become money aware, as I mentioned on video number 1. Become money aware. Alright? So, the point that I'm trying to make on this one, just to close it up, avoid any kind of high interest debt. Try to refinance into lower interest debt if possible. And if you're going to get into debt, try to get into good debt and avoid bad debt. Thank you for tuning in to Professor Choi, and have an excellent day. See you later.